been like obsessed with the 1980s recently and like just old retro stuff. Pokemon, um, The Storyteller, Jim Henson, uh, Stranger Things because it has that retro vibe, and The Karate Kid. So I'm gonna check this out.
As the gritty, gloomy 1970s faded in the rearview mirror, an opportunity for optimism and a clean slate emerged on the horizon. Perhaps
Actually, yeah, I think the 80s were like a really good time for people. They had like the I think the economy was doing well. Let me see. Let's see, everybody. Was the 1980s good for the goo for the U.S.? Fuck it. Is it goo? Is it goo for the U.S.? Yeah, inflation dropped, so we had deflation, and the stock market began a historical bull run. MTV, technology birth. Well, Apple had the first Mac. Bro, fucking love Mac. Bad. Okay, we had AIDS, crack. Oh my god, you guys remember crack? I mean, I remember like the history books of it. That's awful. Winding wealth gap, Reaganomics. Yeah, fuck that. The only thing I like about Reagan, well, I guess he was a good actor, and he did like the Warriors movie, which was cool. If you were a white collar professional or investor, the 80s felt like an era of boundless opportunities, lower tax, and exciting new gadgets. If you were a blue collar worker or lived in the inner city, the decade may have felt like a time of deindustrialization where stable jobs vanished and social safety nets were cut. Yeah, thanks, Reagan. What is it right here? Right here? Where was it? There we go.
this new decade would inspire great change that would leave all this fatigue, division, and stagnation behind. 1980 would be a fresh start,
Wasn't
ushering in an
there?
era like no other.
Wasn't
But of
there
course,
the
this
cold,
appetite for a
the
new way of
communists,
life
the Cold War?
manifested in ways that created
Ah, he
a
has the
lot of
computer there. That's
ambivalence.
sick,
Much of this change
dude.
took the form of unapologetic
Look,
materialism
oh
and
my god, The Breakfast Club, bro. Such a fantastic movie, bro. Oh my gosh, it kind of shows like no matter what walk of life we took and we have as people, that we are all the same. We can all connect and find that common ground and have that friendship and build that unification. Whether you're a nerd, a jock, an outcast, troublemaker, like whatever, it doesn't matter. You know
almost as if it were meant to compensate for how different things had been
what?
before. These
I
unique
forgot that part.
circumstances have since given the 1980s a reputation for its lavish, and
Yeah,
the decade also created for its contemporaries. When
Iran.
we think of neon colors, particularly with Olivia Newton-John inspired gym
What?
outfits, rise of the personal computer.
The
The
PC.
1980s, and they didn't area, what kind of reviews they have, or if their services are a good fit for what you medically need, ranging from mental health, dentistry, eye and skin care, and more. You can even filter your search for doctors that fit your insurance, because America is the only developed nation in the world that doesn't have subsidized healthcare. But don't worry, trickle down economics will take care of that. It
Bro,
even
I
shows
like
you
this
each
guy. What he
doctor's
says?
availability, and you
That's
can
so true.
PC. You don't even need to talk to anybody. So still relatively niche and only used by a minority of people? Yes, absolutely. But it did signify that something big was about to come.
Big. Really, really big.
Things that once took up an entire building, now being able to fit all on your desk, was exciting enough on its own, and people wanted to express that. This is when you get the Apple II era of the 80s, a period which predominantly appears in the early part of the decade, but had its influence and roots form in the late 70s. Much of these science fiction-esque designs stem from the massive popularity of Star Wars, games like Space Invaders,
Yes,
and even
Star
just the
Wars, bro.
emergence of arcade culture.
Dude, I hate arcades, man. I was never the best at the game, so like I'd always take like a lot of money, because I started playing when I was really young. And you want to get past the level. One thing that was cool though is there was this arcade place. It was called Nickel Arcade, and you could play games for a nickel instead of a quarter. So, you didn't need a lot of money to play. And they had a section in there that was just free to play games. You just had to do like the $2 cover charge. So, like me and my dad would go $2 each, boom, $4, get $5 in dimes. I mean, nickels. It's 100 nickels. And we'd have a good time. Be there for a couple hours. And once you run out of coins, we'll just play the free games for a few hours. Good times. Good memories.
General. This unique look and typography that these futuristic designs have took a lot of inspiration from 1950s sci-fi comic books, which used these exaggerated,
Those are dope.
strange, foreign, yet still orderly and idealized. Naturally, this design just caught on, and with the emergence of it was created by associated with a new design known as the Memphis style. It was created by Italian designer Ettore Sottsass in 1980 and was named after the Bob Dylan
Ettore Arts Swaz? Oh man, I can't spell for shit right here. Yeah, I'm looking up some Middle East, South Asian perfume, bruh. Shit, that ain't it. Never mind.
song that associate with look. You know, the geometric shapes and neon colors that
That's
we
so
would
cool.
quickly associate with this decade as well as the first half of the
Bro, I used to work at a company and like that, this like was part of their logo. That was cool.
90s. The very primitive stages of computer graphics certainly highlighted it as a new form of counterculture art that was now slowly entering the mainstream. As we've seen, when a new decade comes along, it introduces things that try to be different from the decade which preceded it, and the 80s was certainly no exception. Denim was already quite a popular fashion choice for a couple of decades. Its association with labor and hard work gave it a sort of tough, rugged appearance,
Yeah,
with
bro.
it then being
Denim's the
appropriated by
shit.
James Dean and greaser culture for this exact reason. Denim suddenly became cool to wear. Not to mention, it was cheap to produce.
Is it? Why the fuck Levi be charging so much, man?
Combine this with the advent of designer denim, created by companies like Guess
Okay, there we go. That's the answer.
Jeans, Levi's, and Calvin Klein.
Oh, because they're designer? Really?
Denim was now even being marketed as a luxury. Further reinforced by Brooke Shields' famous and controversial Calvin Klein ad from 1980, jeans were more popular than ever before. A niche yet still relatively popular fashion choice among women in the early 80s
What's up with,
was the pixie look.
Why
This
is
involved
like, look at that was controversial, bro? Really? Why are jean ads always controversial? You gotta market jeans.
women with short, more masculine haircuts, a look that very much stood out to the trends of the previous decades. This is no surprise given that the pixie cut originates from 70s punk, which was specifically constructed to be incendiary and to upset the status quo. The most popular examples include the Ramones, Sex Pistols, Joy Division, and so on. Its confrontation just how much politics has an influence on art. I was talking to a friend about this the other day, and I think you can certainly make the argument that virtually all of Western 1980s art and pop culture was, in some way, shape, or form, influenced by Reagan Thatcher conservatism.
Fucking Reagan, man. Man.
It's easy to overlook through rose-tinted glasses, but I think a lot of people forget just how awful the 70s were. Now, the 70s will be its own separate video, so I will save all my detailed Vietnam War and Watergate scandal, the Iranian hostage.
Yeah, your president is not a crook. Yes, she is, Nixon. It's okay. It's all in the past.
Just to name a few. You even see this gloominess and grittiness very prevalently in a lot of 70s art. For example, ever noticed how 1970s horror movies are just so much darker and so much more
Yeah, look
disturbing
at that
than
shit.
horror
Look at
movies
that
from
shit.
any other period?
Yeah,
Even
look at that shit.
darker and so much more disturbing than horror
When you
movies
listen to
from any
Skrillex,
other period? Much darker and so much more
drop the voice.
disturbing than horror
Damn, look
movies
at
from
that
any
headbanger.
other period, even from the decades after. You could make the argument that the intense
Uh,
turmoil of the time desensitized people to disturbing things, and
Yeah.
therefore allowed them to more freely and more accurately express trauma. This would be a great example.
Damn, is that why all those horror movies were so good? It was an expression of trauma, a way of like relief and an outlet.
Discuss it later down the road, but all you need to know for now is that it was just not a good time for a lot of people. And with the 1980 US presidential election creeping up, a new decade
Carter.
gave way to new opportunities to turn things around. And
Let's see. Carter versus Reagan policies. Yeah, whatever. I misspelled it. Doesn't matter. Economic policy regulation versus Reaganomics. Jimmy Carter focused on energy conservation and targeted government intervention. Supply side belief they're cutting taxes for the. Yup, we know him. Yup, we all know him. Aggressive deregulation. The corporations do whatever they want. Drop the top marginal tax rate from 70 to 28% over 2 terms. Man, if I never seen some bullshit, I just seen it. Oh my gosh, man. That's so much. So if you were getting if you were getting $300, you'd be getting like 100 now. Dude, what the fuck are they doing? And that didn't happen. The rich people just kept all the money. But Carter had a deficit of 2.7, so Carter kind of sucked.
populist candidate was quickly personifying this. Although his policies are viewed very contentiously today, Ronald Reagan was largely seen as the healing that America needed at this time, the light at the end of the tunnel.
Ronald Reagan for president. Let's make America great again.
He was charming, funny.
Did he just say what I think he said?
Reagan for president.
Let's make America great again. This is the man who, remember what I said. We looked it up right now. Where is it? Massive cuts dropped the top marginal tax rate. So with that, the top tax rate, okay? The richest people, people with all the money, we used to tax them 70%. So a person makes $1 million, they only keep $300K. Now a person makes $1 million, they keep $720,000. And they raised the taxes. Let me see. Did Reagan raise taxes? Did Reagan raise taxes on lower income? I'm not going to spell his name right. I don't care. Increase in payroll taxes. Hold on, let's see. Payroll taxes about lower income. Yeah, look at that. Well, income taxes went down, payroll taxes, Social Security, and Medicare went up. This is a critical distinction between payroll taxes are regressive. They take a large percentage of a low income worker's paycheck than a higher income. So poor person makes, $50,000, if that. Probably even less, but let's go with that. And they're gonna probably take 30,000 of that. Boom, we're left with 20K. First is the person with $1 million, now left with 720K. Bro, it's fucked. Make America great again for who?
Let's make America great again.
He was charming, funny, optimistic, and to many of his contemporaries, his politics just made sense.
There you go again. When you make that decision, it might be well if you would ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
The main idea which he was writing on was something called Reaganomics. Now this is
That's kind of fucked, because sometimes things happen in the world and like we don't have control over it, like big geopolitical, things that go on, and in politics they'll blame those things on the person they're running against, and I mean, shit, it's a tool in the toolbox, but I mean, if you know what's going on, it's a shady tool to play.
very touchy political subject, even economics, is essentially a philosophy that is built on a broader framework known as supply-side economics. Much of the post-depression US economy was operating on something called Keynesian economics, which emphasized government intervention to increase demand and therefore foster economic growth and employment. This typically involved increased government spending, some higher taxes, and more regulation. A lot of critics
Government spending isn't necessarily terrible because it is a significant chunk of our GDP. So to say that like increasing that is just a bad thing, no. But there's more levels to it. Like as you were saying about taxes, like it's where does the government get the money from? Is the thing. Is getting it from the people, taxes. Does it have like a sovereign account, like some European nations? Does it have like, a stipend that gets paid out from like a natural resource like oil or copper or whatever, so yeah.
blamed this for much of the high unemployment and stagflation of the 1970s. Supply-side economics basically does the opposite. The idea was that if you lower taxes for corporations, these corporations now have more money in their pockets. Therefore, they can use that money to increase production and therefore
Why not put the money in the people's pockets and the people will go out and spend it? And then the corporations can get some of that money. And then they can use that money to increase their profits and all that bullshit. Like I think it's flipped on the wrong side. Like it should be the other way. As much as things are like steered to help out the businesses and the corporations, like I don't think we should like destroy our businesses and corporations. It's very necessary and needed, but I think back to like the 70% taxes, that would be a lot better. They'll manage. These companies have so much money, they do so well, they'll manage just fine. 70% taxes. And, if they're gonna, come on, there needs to be a way.
increase sales. Now that they are making more money, they can afford to expand operations, which means they can hire more employees and even pay them higher wages. And with less government regulation, it is much easier for these companies to get things done. An exception to lower government spending was for the military, which actually saw increased funding. This was a more attractive policy during the Cold
You see, why I don't like this is because it seems like the bulk of the money goes to the corporations, and then they can choose how much they give out to who. Versus if the money goes to the people, then the people can go to the corporations, and the people can pick and choose what corporations they want to see thriving and surviving. I mean, maybe a mix of like capitalism and socialism. I don't know. Very complicated stuff.
War. So not only do the corporations get richer, but some of that money also ends up coming down and reaching the working class as well. Everybody wins. Of course, this economic theory was not immune to criticism. Many of Reagan's opponents pejoratively called this trickle-down economics, as it suggested that the rich were getting so much richer while the working class just received the scraps that were left behind.
Additionally, Reagan also cut taxes for rich individuals, not just corporations.
Other critiques of this theory
Everybody gets
argue
a
that
tax cut.
corporations
Fools like Oprah
typically
with the
don't
tax
use
cuts.
the extra money to increase production, but instead they just hold on to it and therefore hoard their wealth. Precursors to supply-side economics were tried in the 1890s, referred to at the time as horse and sparrow economics. Many critics have argued that this was partially responsible for the Panic of 1896, but Reaganomics was one of the first
Government concepts
to truly embrace and take on a much more refined, modern form of this theory. This became a trend.
That Reaganomics shit is bullshit. That trickle down economics, that bullshit on some bullshit. Hold up, you smell that? I smell some bullshit.
70s, and its prevalence would only compound with the popularity of personal computers. And so, New Wave is born. Obviously, these are not things that appear overnight. There is always cultural
Music's so
overlap.
good, huh?
Heart of Glass by Blondie was released in 1979, but in my opinion, it does sound like a very 80s song. Meanwhile, Michael Jackson's Off the Wall album, which came out that same year, is basically your quintessential
that's my-
70s disco album. But as the political
That's
and
the man
atmospheric
right there. That's
tone
Michael
shifts,
Jackson.
we start to see which cultural trends take priority. The upbeat sounds and vibrant visuals of things like New Wave and the Memphis style were aesthetic representations of these positive vibes of the time. But when you
Bananarama, bro. That's the shit.
combine these things and take advantage of growing technology, you then end up with something truly incredible. Something that would essentially help define the entire decade.
Michael Jackson. What's his
Ladies and
face?
gentlemen, rock and
Oh, MTV.
Now, I've done an entire video about cable
Yes,
television, but the long and
bro.
short is that it was a new technology that not only gave people access to way more TV channels, but ones that had way less regulation. This allowed for MTV to become insanely popular, and was an outlet for artists to combine music and video, and to do so in a freely expressive way. The best way to see success in this new space is to grab the viewer's attention through unconventional and borderline provocative means. You start to see a lot of traditional gender
show 'em your
roles
ass.
being broken. Men wearing makeup and dressing very feminine. Women dressing very masculine, like we just talked about earlier. Other ways to grab the viewer's attention was through crazy hairstyles. This allowed for 80s hair to become a thing, and the success of bands like Kiss and Aerosmith from the 70s proved that shock rock could be transformed, and you get glam rock and hair metal. But one artist in particular not only mastered this appeal to androgyny,
Who?
other level. Michael Jackson.
Oh.
Now, Michael was already a huge celebrity by the end of the 1970s, due to his history with the Jackson 5 and his newly released debut solo album. But his innovations throughout the 1980s
Thought Jackson was
not
the
only
youngest.
made him essentially the face of the entire decade,
Michael.
but one of the most influential musicians of all time.
Oh.
During the
So this quick thing. This is about crack. Conspiracy theory. This is about crack and all the people in the night. This is before the crack pandemic, but it's like a foreshadowing crack.
entire decade, but one of the most influential musicians of all time. During this new era of music being fully expressed through visual means, Michael's incredible singing, songwriting, dancing, and mesmerizing outfits immediately stood out.
For real, bro. Look at that. Look at that. Look at the shoe and the hassock. Dude, the leather jacket, bro. This is iconic, man. This is why The Weeknd wears that shiny red jacket. You know, I think it's like a shout out, to Michael Jackson.
To anybody watching MTV.
And the belt, you saw that
his
belt?
immediately stood out to
That's a belt, no?
anybody
That's what I
watching.
got. Yeah. There's like bullets and stuff, like a Gucci belt.
The TV premiere of Thriller was like the Super Bowl, one of those unforgettable events that would define an entire generation. His unique music and appearance as the king of pop would no doubt also have an influence on the culture of the
The king.
time. Other artists like Prince had a very similar approach, and Purple Rain.
He's
I think it's
okay.
up a culture was arguably the most liberally expressive the modern world had seen a time in gay culture, but frankly still hadn't fully decided on how they felt about it. A administration. He even opposed California's Briggs Initiative in 1978, which aimed to ban gay and lesbian people from teaching in public schools.
Reagan?
Even if these stances were purely politically motivated, there is no doubt in my mind that Reagan was not the only person at this time feeling a lot of ambivalence towards what was a new and touchy social issue. And I believe this would absolutely influence the art of the time, even to a
Damn, Reagan just causing problems for everybody, huh?
world of chaos and confusion, popularized a lot of experimental comedy, both observational
Hey, it's a good
and
movie.
downright absurd and almost avant-garde. The kind of stuff
It's
that
just
just
too wacky,
seems
I didn't like it.
nonsensical at face value. The Federal Trade Commission
made me
Improvements Act of
uncomfortable,
19 curtailed most regulation towards advertising to children. And this was during a time where merchandise culture was growing insanely popular thanks to the success of Star Wars. As a result, children were suddenly a whole new market companies could profit from.
That's
and
messed
so
up, bro.
children's prominent very
Let's see what
growing
it's saying.
sense of nostalgia. We've talked about the
Yes.
childhood innocence altogether.
So good.
It's important to remember, which brings me to what I think is one of the most interesting aspects of the 80s. It was arguably the era of the shared experience. Television in general
Yeah, that's one thing. People were more connected, and like everybody was kind of on the same stuff. Like Michael Jackson, Pokemon, a new movie came out. It's kind of like, everybody was digesting things slowly at the same time. Whereas now with social media, everybody's jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. This is viral, that's viral. Oh, Venezuela, oh, China, oh, new TikTok dance, new, 6-7, whatever. And it definitely, like you could be in a whole nother part of the internet than somebody else you talk to on a regular basis, and just not connect in that way. Whereas before, like he was saying, when Thriller came out, everybody came out and watched it on their TV. It was a shared experience. And you think of like other like holidays and like sports events, I think people were more connected, more together. Like kids riding their bikes, like with your homies. Like I barely got to have that experience, and like it seems like my generation was the last to have like any of that, and even that was so little.
always had the power to connect us all together in real time. But with the rise of cable, there was so much more content to consume. But not too much, to the point where it feels like each person is just in their own little media bubble. It was just enough for someone to still have a choice while being able to experience something with lots of other people. There were so many times where history was made and the earth stood still to watch it happen live.
Interrupt this. John Lennon is dead. Lennon died in a hospital shortly after being shot outside his New York apartment tonight.
Engines at 65%.
In the Soviet Union again tops this edition.
And geologists say that she is erupting more violently now.
I can kick.
You're a...
It was television that allowed everyone to experience the 80s together at the same time. But of course,
That was the
as
freaking
the
ad?
popularity searching for an identity. Other popular examples of this include
Hold up.
childhood innocence altogether. It's important to remember that
Engines at 65%.
Around here.
is erupt...
television that
Bro, that was Apple's ad?
It was television
But now that's how everybody is on their phone and computer. Dude, that's sus as fuck.
that allowed everyone to experience the 80s together at the same time. All the reasons I
And that's it.
you
no.
can
Yeah. Bro, that was amazing. And yeah, oh my gosh, the 80s, such a good time. And like, I like so many points that he brought up in this video. And so many, like, the economics of it, the cultural aspects of it, you know, and also how, like, the 70s kind of led up into that. You know, Michael Jackson, oh, the greatest. And then all the movies, bro, all the media, man. Like, that is just so much media, dude. Like, the shared experience was real. And then it ends with Apple taking over the world. But, yeah. Anyways, that was wonderful. That was amazing. Shout outs to the Nation, Squid. Dope content. Alright, peace.